We're living through the biggest technological shift in history. AI is outperforming PhDs, controlling our computers, and can invent new physics. And it's only getting better, faster, and cheaper. Business as we know it has completely changed. And in times like these, the few that are able to make the right moves despite uncertainty will win. So I'm not going to cover how to prompt AI models or how to integrate it into your business, because that would be completely missing the point. Just a few days ago, DeepSeek completely changed the entire industry's thesis on where AI is headed. And so the experts are just as lost as everyone else. So instead, what you need is to understand the few things that don't change and how to apply those principles into your business. In this video, I'm going to share what those are and a 4-part framework you can use to orient your business to win. And this isn't just theory. In the last 30 days alone, I used this exact framework to help my friend Callaway go from 0 to 100K in pure profit with a clear path to $10 million months, regardless of what happens with AI. So the opportunity is massive and the window is closing fast. You're going to want to pay attention. All right, so instead of memorizing frameworks, we need to start with basic principles as tools you can use to recreate your own mental models and solve whatever problem you want. I'm formally trained as an engineer, and as an engineer, you're typically given basic tools to solve whatever problem. They typically come in form of formulas through math and science principles, but they're the mental equivalent of being handed a screwdriver, nails, a hammer, etc. In class, you're taught how to use the tools to build something like a table, and in a test, you might be told to use those same tools to build a cabinet, something you've never seen before. Now, in the real world, you're going to build rocket engines, and so they try to prepare you with basic principles that you can use to solve whatever problem. These are your base tools. So the better tools you have, the better able you are to solve problems you've never seen before. So this is what I want to give to you. The tools will be principles which will create the foundation for our reasoning through problem. And for this video, we're going to start with 4 basic principles. The first principle is actually a meta principle, and it's start with what is true. This is also known as first principles thinking and is what allowed Elon Musk to go into hyper-competitive, near impossible to win industries and come out on top. For SpaceX, he started with a simple truth. Manufacturing is simply rearranging atoms. And so he asked, well, what do the actual atoms or raw materials of a rocket actually cost? The answer was 2% of what rockets were actually being sold for. And that 98% difference made him billions. For Tesla, he did the exact same thing with batteries. Broke them down to their fundamental elements, lithium, nickel, cobalt, found another massive gap between raw material costs and market prices, and went on to dominate that market. Elon's secret is first principles thinking, breaking everything down to its most basic truths. In rockets, it's atoms. In business, it's dopamine. I'm an engineer. I was trained to think like this, but you don't actually need an engineering degree. In fact, Elon Musk doesn't have one either. You just need to understand one thing, and that's our next principle. Principle 2, tasks are fundamental. David Deutsch is the father of quantum computation. He was able to predict that we might be living in a multiverse, which Google might have found evidence of through their groundbreaking quantum chip. All of this to say, the way he thinks has high predictive power. And when someone is better able to predict the future than you should lean in. He spent his entire life trying to understand physics at the most fundamental level. And he came up with a new way to make sense of it all. He calls it constructor theory. And the core insight at the base of Deutsch's understanding of reality are what he calls tasks, or transformations from one state to another. And without understanding quantum mechanics, there's actually a very valuable insight here, because the word task is actually a pretty common idea to wrap your mind around. Tasks fill up your daily to-do list, and your goal of making $1 billion, that's a big task made of a bunch of smaller tasks. So it's tasks all the way down. And when you think in terms of tasks, you can turn any goal into action. To make this practical, let's look at an example. If you're a business owner that consumes any amount of information on YouTube, odds are you've seen Alex Hormozi's face before. Now, why has he blown up the way he has? There are plenty of others who have bigger wins and are more knowledgeable than he is in certain areas. So why is he dominating? Well, it's because he thinks in terms of tasks. In fact, if you pay close attention to his content, he defines everything in terms of tasks, just like David Deutsch, but at the level of human behavior. A common example he uses is teaching someone to be charismatic. He breaks down be charismatic, the task, into smaller subtasks. Make eye contact, stand up straight, smile, etc. That's why his content hits different. Pure action, no fluff. And it's because he thinks in terms of tasks. All right, our third principle is principles are used to complete tasks. When you sell anything, what you're really selling is the completion of a task. When selling to businesses, that task is usually tied to one of three core metrics: acquisition, measured by signups or sales; monetization, measured by revenue; and retention, measured by active users or customers. And because we can't just snap our fingers and have a task be magically completed, we usually need to break that task down into smaller subtasks and complete those one by one. And when we break them down, we use principles or statements that explain cause-effect relationships to identify what those subtasks should be and in what order they should be in. If tasks are the how, principles are the why. The reason this is important to understand is that identifying the right tasks to invest resources into and in what order is the game of business. And the reason why some people are better at it than others is because of principle 4. People default to their own personal laws of physics. As we go through life, we collect and synthesize data points that form our worldview. This becomes our reality, and a lot of it is subconscious. You don't need to learn physics to learn about gravity in order to learn how to walk. You just walk. Everyone carries their own personal laws of physics that explain their reality. These are their beliefs. When something happens, their personal laws of physics explain it away. And some beliefs are much more deeply held than others. This is why two people can walk away from the exact same experience with two completely different interpretations of what happened. Not that long ago, diseases were thought to be caused by demons or witchcraft. Now we have better explanations and can prevent those diseases from happening. Because the closer your beliefs are to truth, the more able you are to see reality for what it is, and the better able you are to navigate uncertainty and solve problems. So if you're an entrepreneur trying to build a personal brand, the best thing you can do is create content that updates people's belief systems. You want to align them closer to reality. That's really what the best education-based content is. Before consuming content, you might have believed A, so your actions reflect A, which might have actively be moving you away from your goals. After consuming content, you might believe B, so your actions reflect B, which might move you closer towards your goals. The more times you do this for someone, updating their beliefs, getting them closer towards their goals, the deeper the trust you'll build with them, and they'll buy anything from you. All right, so now that we've covered that you want to start with what is true, tasks are fundamental, principles are used to complete tasks, and people default to their own personal laws of physics. Let's apply those principles to tactical business strategy. Now, to clarify, I define strategy as a prioritized sequence of tasks, and we're going to use the principles to help us sequence those tasks. So to ground our thinking, we'll use Naval Ravikant's philosophy around leverage. The general concept is that leverage gives you more out for what you put in. So having more leverage is good. The more leverage you have, the more you can do with less. And by his definition, there are four main types of leverage: capital and labor, which are the old forms of leverage, and media and code, which are the new forms of leverage. And so when we think in terms of tasks, leverage becomes even simpler because a task can be executed by you, someone else, labor, or something else, like code. Through this frame, capital just gets you more task completion through labor, by hiring people, or code, by buying compute. And media captures your ability to complete a task and transfers it to others, essentially creating more use. So when it comes to building leverage, the playbook becomes execute a task, document how you executed that task through a sequenced list of subtasks, and why through principles. And then you want to embed those principles into other people's belief systems so that they can carry out those tasks without you. Lastly, you want to automate that task or transformation end to end with code. Now, when we think of leverage in terms of tasks, suddenly, the business implications of AI become clear. Because with a single media asset, whether it's a prompt you write, a voice note you send, or a video that you record, you can replicate your ability to do anything. The raw intelligence is already in our pockets, but the infrastructure to make that intelligence useful and execute tasks completely autonomously end to end is still being built. And that's what we'll be seeing in 2025. And so the last tasks to be automated away will be the last few remaining that are the hardest to replicate. And those few remaining tasks are exactly what you should be building your business around. The model that I suggest uses this insight to our advantage. As AI wipes entire business models out, This one only gets stronger. Nassim Nicholas Taleb calls this anti-fragility. We want the uncertainty of AI to make us stronger. That's an anti-fragile business. Because of all the tasks we could have picked to anchor our business around, we strategically chose the very last thing to get automated. This allows us to ride AI's acceleration up until the point where money doesn't matter anymore and the game is over. But up until that point, we will have automated every single other task surrounding the one that can't be automated. And that will have built us a monopoly around that core transformation. Tactically, the way we do this is by climbing what I call the leverage ladder. And there are 4 levels. Level 1 is you want to sprint to capital. You assume you'd want to sprint as fast as possible to media and code leverage, but that's not actually the optimal path, because both media and code are compounding assets, meaning it'll take a while to see any return. Over time, you obviously want as much leverage to come from those sources, but up front, you want to sprint to capital that'll help you jump up to the next level as fast as possible. So what does that actually look like? As mentioned, when you sell anything, really what you're selling is a completion of a task. And when you're selling to businesses, that task is usually tied to one of 3 core metrics: acquisition, monetization, and retention. Each of these 3 metrics can be broken down into input metrics. For acquisition, which is measured by signups or sales, you'd break it down into signups or sales from each channel, like cold outreach, paid ads, organic, etc. And each one of these might have their own sub-metrics nested beneath. For organic, you might have YouTube and the other platforms. And for that channel, there's another layer of input metrics that you can think about. For example, a common funnel would be total posts published to YouTube, total views, the conversion of viewed to clicked, and the conversion of clicked to signed up. Moving any of these metrics require a ton of effort. So the most efficient way to sprint to capital would be to pick the one you have the most confidence in making the biggest impact on with the least amount of effort and risk. And a tip here is you can consider yourself like a doctor diagnosing a business. Some businesses will need open heart surgery, like completely pivoting to a different customer or offer, but it'd be harder to convince them to implement because it's such an invasive procedure and would require a lot of effort, sacrifice, or risk on their end. So instead, you can start by recommending a non-invasive procedure like a lead magnet that's pretty low risk but might have an impact. When you deliver a small transformation, you earn the trust needed to implement a larger transformation. But the point is to anchor the core transformation your business offers around a specific revenue-driving metric, narrowing down to a hyper-specific task for a hyper-specific type of customer not only allows you to charge more, but since there are fewer changing variables, you're able to deliver that transformation more efficiently over time and can replicate that ability into somebody else. The sweet spot is aiming for a transformation where 99% of it can eventually be automated away, but the last 1% can only be done by you or replicated by someone else. This hyper-specific subtask will be your life raft through the AI disruption. Note that sprinting to capital requires that you have the ability to move a metric. But the goal of level 1 is to generate just enough cash to get you into the next rung of the ladder. Level 2, reinvest into labor. As mentioned, not all tasks need to be completed by you personally. Most tasks can be delegated to somebody else or automated with code. At this level, you want to immediately reinvest the capital into labor to free up your calendar. Ideally, they're able to execute the majority of your transformation without you. These are your first steps towards automating the 99%. Tactically, you should be looking at the past 2 weeks of your calendar and auditing each time block on 3 variables. How much time did this task take you to complete, whether it gives you or drains you of energy, and how much money this task generates for the business. For each time block, mark energy drainers in red and energy givers in green, and assign dollar signs on a scale of 1 to 4, indicating how much money they make you. For energy draining tasks that take a ton of time and don't make any money, immediately delete, delegate, or automate away. You want to remove as many of these from your calendar as possible. The goal is to spend as little time as possible on low leverage tasks that do not compound and drain you of energy, and as much time as possible on high leverage tasks that do compound and give you energy. This will give you the space needed to jump into the next level. Level 3, replicate with media. Now that you have the space on your calendar, you want to invest as many resources as possible into media. This is a compounding asset that will build your brand, drive sales in your sleep, and transfer your skills into others. It's incredibly high leverage. When picking a platform, I advise starting with YouTube. Now, a lot of people advise against starting with YouTube because it's a higher barrier to entry, but when we reason from first principles, we realize that it's actually not the case. of all the platforms, it has the highest return on effort. In the age of AI, all platforms are going to be saturated with AI-generated content, but YouTube is uniquely human. Right now, there are AI video companies that are trying to make this as realistic as possible, but they haven't yet caught up. Eventually they will, but blockchain technology will eventually solve for understanding what's authentic and what's not. And YouTube is also the best form of creating deep trust quickly with a target audience and gives you a broad skill set that you can apply to other areas of the business. Now, an easy way to get started with YouTube is immediately hire an editor so your content stands out, transcribe all calls as you fulfill for your customers, and extract valuable insights from those transcripts as the basis for your video outlines. This way, you can focus on just delivering results and then talking about what you're learning as you're fulfilling for your customers. The way you do that is by listing the step-by-step tasks you're taking to deliver the transformation, and then talk about why you're doing what you're doing. So if my business helps with acquisition, specifically targeting the percentage of people that view a video and convert into sign up, a non-invasive mechanism that I can get good at is building lead magnets. I could walk through the thought process behind why I landed on a specific type of lead magnet, how I'd go about building them, and why I'd build them in that way. As you articulate your thinking, both in terms of the how, tasks, and the why, principles, you showcase your expertise around a problem, and you build deep trust as the best person to solve that problem for others. So that's one content format. Why do these things in this order? Another content format is to think in terms of beliefs. Previously, we talked about how everyone has their own personal laws of physics. The goal with this approach is to shift beliefs to better align with reality. Changing someone's beliefs changes their behavior, which impacts their progress towards their goals. When you impact their progress, a single video can win you a customer for life. So when it comes to shifting beliefs, I think about it in 3 buckets. Imagine someone's personal laws of physics as a list of rank-ordered beliefs, with the strongest held beliefs at the top and the weakest held beliefs at the bottom. When you're creating content, you're either educating, reinforcing, or reframing beliefs. When you're educating, you're adding a new belief onto the list that wasn't there before. When you're reinforcing, you're taking a pre-existing belief on the list and increasing confidence in it, moving it higher in the list. And when you're reframing, you're challenging a pre-existing belief that's on the list and updating it to align closer with reality. We can visually represent the impact each of these have on a number line, where 1 is towards a goal and -1 is away from a goal. Reinforcing is basically taking a belief that you already have but you're not taking action on and providing data and better explanations to increase your confidence in it so that you actually take action. So this is like moving from 0.5 to 1. You're like halfway there, but reinforcing helps you move closer. Educating assumes you're starting at 0. You don't even know it exists. After consuming content, you know what direction to head into. This is like moving from 0 to 1, which is a bigger change than reinforcing. And that change translates to a bigger dopamine release, because the bigger impact you have on someone's goals, the bigger the reward. And over time, you build deep trust. Reframing is when you have a belief that is actively working against you and moving you away from your goals. And when you reframe that belief, you're taking someone from -1 to 1, a massive difference. This is the most impactful kind of content because it has the biggest delta and therefore the biggest dopamine release. Imagine telling someone, hey, you know that gravity thing you think exists? It doesn't. And if you're right and do an effective job of embedding that belief in someone, you've built max trust. They were headed down a completely wrong path, but thanks to the reframe that you introduced them to, they're back on track. Now, as you would imagine, reframing is much harder to come by than educating because you're reinforcing what they already know with new data and better explanations. And a fair warning here, if you ineffectively challenge someone's deeply held beliefs, that can backfire. So you want to get good at this. And getting good at all 3 requires a lot of reps, which is why we needed to free up space on your calendar. But here's a bonus. Even though we've been talking about creating public-facing content, this is the exact same process for building internal-facing content that trains your team. You're basically completing a task and replicating that ability into someone else by mapping the subtasks and the corresponding principles to guide them. And better yet, this is also the exact same process for jumping into the next level. Level 4, automate with code. So if we were delegating tasks to people at level 2, here we want to progressively automate each subtask of the transformation end to end with code. I've helped thousands of people without CS degrees become software engineers. And what I found is that most people get intimidated by code, not because of how difficult it is, but because they misunderstand it. So here's what you need to know about code. Code is simply a set of instructions. And an easy way to illustrate this is the peanut butter and jelly test. If you were to tell someone, can you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? They would go into the kitchen and immediately grab the right things and put it together. If you were to try to tell a computer to complete that same task, you would have to be way more more specific. You'd have to say things like, locate the cylindrical glass in the room, extend your right arm towards the cylindrical glass, wrap your right thumb, index, middle, ring, and pinky fingers around the cylindrical glass, and so on and so forth. Now, as you can imagine, computers are dumb. And the way these instructions were originally written started out as zeros and ones, which is what people typically associate with code. But the languages have progressed to recent programming languages like Python and JavaScript. To today, you can even code in English thanks to AI. So to clarify, if you can provide instructions in English, you can code. And with the latest models that have reasoning, which means they break down the task into subtasks and explain why they're doing what they're doing, you don't even need to provide instructions anymore. Instead, you need to be able to articulate exactly what you're looking for and why one output is good versus bad. So if coding in previous models heavily depended on you providing the how, newer models will heavily depend on you providing the why, both of which are skills we've been building this whole time. In short, AI engineers of the future aren't coders. They are people who deeply understand a specific problem, task, or transformation needed to get someone from A to B, all the subtask and reasoning principles nested beneath that task, and are able to accurately diagnose where a model took a wrong turn and fix it in order to predictably reproduce the desired result. And as a reminder, to become world-class at anything is difficult. So to increase the chances of success, you need to be hyper-dialed on the specific kind of transformation to focus on. And that's the whole point. This whole model is based around getting monstrously good at something, building so much media leverage that you become known for it, and replicating your ability into others and AI to be able to deliver that transformation without you. This model scales from 10K to 100K to $10 million a month and beyond. And just remember, the core skill and AI's ultimate limiting factor is your ability to articulate how you do what you do and why from first principles. All right, that's it for this one. If you like this, check out this video to learn more.